Hey, how you doing? I'm Steve. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to turn the spotlight on a band that's known for pushing musical boundaries and blending genres like really no other rock band ever has. Today, we're going to talk about Extreme. So who is Extreme? Well, they're a rock band that was formed in Boston, Massachusetts around 1985. It consists of incredibly talented musicians, vocalist Geary Cherone, guitarist Nuno Bettencourt, original drummer Paul Geary, and bassist Pat Badger. Nuno Bettencourt was born in Portugal in 1966. He's the youngest of 10 kids. His family moved to the United States in the 70s, and they were a working class family. His primary interests growing up were around sports, although he did play a little bit of drums. He never touched the guitar until he was encouraged by a brother. Even then, he didn't really want to do it. Once he learned a complete song, Nights in White Satin by Moody Blues, he was hooked. He quit school and he learned everything he could get his hands on. Now, he says his influence ranged from Eddie Van Halen to Yngwie Malmsteen and jazz great Al Di Meola. He's been married once to an Australian singer named Susie DeMarchi from 1994 to 2013, and they have two kids, Bibi, who's an actress, and a son, Lorenzo. There are numerous guitar players who cite Nuno as their biggest influence. He's one of mine. He's a fantastic player. His work on Play With Me was amazing the first time I've heard it. I love that song. He is awesome. Geary Cherone was born July 26, 1961. He comes from a working-class Catholic family, and he was raised in Malden, Massachusetts. He's the third of 5 brothers. He's got a fraternal twin named Greg, and he originally wanted to pursue a career in basketball. This dream ended when he got a knee injury, so he fell back to his second love, which was music. When he was a teenager, he began singing in bands, and he cites Roger Daltrey of The Who, Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, and Freddie Mercury of Queen as his influences. He is extremely, get it? Yeah, I know. He's extremely private about his personal life, but he has been married, or not, to Betsy Cheney since 1992. Seems there are conflicting reports, so only they know. He's openly Christian, and he's been very vocal about his faith-based beliefs. Paul Geary was born July 24th, 1961 in Medford, Massachusetts. He grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Boston, and Deep Purple. He almost went to prison for a credit card scam, and after that he dedicated his life to earning an honest living and focused on his drums. Now, after meeting Geary, they formed what was soon to be called The Dream, and they did pretty well in the Boston music scene. Paul drove the business side of the band, and he was getting them the gigs and all that kind of stuff. CBS at the time was developing a new TV series for John Stamos about an up-and-coming rock band making their way through the music business, trying to get signed. They wanted the name The Dream, but it belonged to these guys. So Paul worked a deal with them. They paid him $25,000 and $500 an episode that aired for the name. Pretty good deal. Pat Badger was born July 26, 1967 in Boston. He performed with several bands other than Extreme. Now, I haven't been able to find much on him for his early years. I did find out he spent a semester at Berklee College of Music in Boston where he was customizing guitars and he met the other guys in Extreme. Other than that, I really can't find much about him. It's kind of weird. Anyway, Geary and Paul, after CBS bought the rights to The Dream, they changed the name of the band to X Dream, or Extreme, right? It's a pun. Extreme. Get it? Anyway. So Nuno was playing with another band called Sinful, and that's when he and Geary met. They discovered that they had a lot in common, like the love of Queen, and Nuno said they just got good vibes from each other. Geary asked Nuno to join the band without ever hearing him play. He just said, "I don't need to." That's all there is to it. And so they started writing songs, and that's how Extreme got started. Extreme started gigging all over Boston and was building quite a large following. And they were named Outstanding Hard Rock / Heavy Metal Act in Boston Music Awards 86 and 87. They were signed to A&M Records in 1987, and they recorded their first album entitled Extreme, which was released in March of 1989. Now, the first single was Kid Ego, and that wasn't Gary's favorite. They did Play With Me, which was used in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the movie. It was during the mall chase. It's a great movie. You got to check it out. If you haven't seen the movie, you got to see it.
Excellent!
Now, I bought this album right after it was released, and I loved it. This is easily my favorite album by the band. While the sales of the first release were not as big as they hoped, Nuno played on Janet Jackson's song Black Cat, and that gained some attention for the band, and this helped them to get support for a second release. Extreme 2, Pornograffiti, was released in 1990, and this album broke them loose. Now, it featured a lot more mature lyrics and even more of Nuno's guitar prowess, but it was an acoustic ballad, the iconic More Than Words, that got them noticed. It hit number 1 on the Billboard charts, and the follow-up song, Wholehearted, reached number 4. Now get the funk out. A fun combo of rock guitars and funky feel reached number 19 on the UK charts. Their third album began recording in 1992, but it was delayed because of their performance at the Eddie Mercury tribute concert in April of 92. This performance gained them a bunch of new fans and a lot of growing popularity. Brian May, who's the guitarist for Queen, he noted in his introductory speech of the band that the band was, quote, possibly more than any other group on the planet, the people that understand exactly what Queen has been about for all these years and what Freddy was about for all these years. Now that had to be good for a legend like Brian May to say that about their band. I mean, Nuno and Geary really loved Queen, and that had to make them feel good. At the tribute concert, Geary got the opportunity to sing with the surviving 3 members of Queen, as well as Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath, on the song Hammer to Fall. How cool is that? 3 Sides to Every Story was released September 1992, and the first single was Rest in Peace, a song about war and peace, and the hypocrisy of those who preach about it. The song peaked at number 90 on the Billboard charts, but the album hit top 10 in the first week. The same year, Nuno worked as a producer on John Wordman Preziosa's debut album, and John, as he's a rapper if you don't know that, he performed the rap on Extreme's Cupid's Dead song. In 1994, drummer Paul Geary left the band to pursue what turned out to be a promising career in artist management. He was replaced by drummer Mike McGeaney. Their fourth album, Waiting for the Punchline, was released February 7, 1995, with 3 singles released, Hip Today, Unconditionally, and Cynical, but the album peaked at number 40 on the Billboard charts. 1996 saw the end of Extreme as they agreed to split amicably when Nuno decided to pursue a solo career. Geary was encouraged to join Van Halen to replace Sammy Hagar, who had been abruptly fired from the band in 1996, and after a failed attempt to reunite with David Lee Roth. Obviously, this was a pretty turbulent time for Van Halen, and Geary was set up to fail right from the start. Geary and Eddie, they hit it off right off the bat. Now, Eddie later referred to Geary as his musical soulmate. They recorded the Van Halen 3 album, and that was released in 1998. During this time, Geary actually lived in Eddie's guest house for most of 1997. That was the whole time they were recording the album, so they definitely got really close. This album was a departure from what Van Halen had done before, and it wasn't well received. While it reached number 4 on the Billboard charts, it only sold 500 copies. That should be 500,000 copies. I do not know what I was thinking. Sorry about that. And for most bands, that's successful. For Van Halen, when they're used to selling over 2 million copies in the US alone, that was a failure. Unfortunately, I think this was just bad timing. The album isn't bad at all. I love the song Year to the Day. It also features the one and only song Eddie ever sang lead on, How Many Say I. And he only did this because he was encouraged by Geary to do it. And he's not their best singer, but I actually kind of thought the song was pretty cool. Anyway, the band started recording the follow-up album, and the reports conflict, but some say that Warner Brothers, the band's label, sent the album back a few times. Geary got frustrated, and in November of 1999, he parted ways with Van Halen amicably, and the album never saw the light of day. Geary went on to form a new band called the Tribe of Judah with bassist Pat Badger and drummer Mike McGeaney. Essentially Extreme without Nuno. They released an EP in 2001 and a full album called Exit Elvis in 2002. It's a bit different from the work that Geary had done previously. One song, Left for Dead, was originally slated for the Van Halen album that got canceled. And it's different, but I like it a lot. The rest of the album is pretty solid. It's kind of cool. A bit funky and in some ways experimental of mixing of genres, which is an extreme thing, as we all know, but it's pretty interesting. Exit Elvis is a potpourri of genres. Like there's some jazz, there's some extremish vibe, there's Spanish guitar, pretty ripping guitar solos, some operatic vocals. It's a roller coaster for the ears, but I think it's pretty cool and you should check it out. Give it a listen. Now, through all this Van Halen stuff, Geary and Sammy didn't hate each other. So much so that when Sammy released his Live Hallelujah concert album in 2003, Geary appeared on it and he sang on When It's Love. Nuno released his first solo album, Schizophonic, in 1997, on which he played most of the instruments. He had some guest vocals by Geary and drums by Mike McGeaney. It has an alternate rock feel, a bit of a departure from the hard rock stylings of Extreme that he's known for, but the guitar work is solid and tasty, and, well, Nuno's got a good voice. If you haven't listened to it, it's definitely worth something to check out. I really enjoyed Swollen Princess and Gravity. Great songs. In 1998, Nuno formed a new group called Mourning Widows, which released a self-titled album that same year and a follow-up called Furnished Souls for Rent in 2000. This band included his nephew Donovan Bettencourt on bass and Jeff Conci on drums. Now, Nuno actually played drums on the first album under the pseudonym Billy Vegas. Both albums are not widely distributed in the US, but it did pretty well in Japan. They're definitely heavier and funkier, reminiscent of Extreme in a lot of ways, but there's some grunge influences in there as well. No Regrets is a great song. In 2001, Nuno let the band go and recorded another album as Population 1. He recorded most of the parts himself. He formed a band and they went on tour to support the album. Then they did an EP called Session from Room Number 4. In 2005, due to legal issues, Nuno had to drop the name Population 1, so he renamed the band Drama Gods. This band, same lineup, released its first album, Love, in December of 2005, which is only available as an import from Japan. They toured in Japan and performed at the Udo Music Festival along with Kiss, Santana, and others. In 2006, they contributed their song Soke to an album project, Artists for Charity, Guitarists for the Kids, to assist World Vision Canada in helping underprivileged kids in need. I have tried to find music by Drama Gods and for this album, which I find references, but I just can't find the audio. That's too bad. I really like to hear it. 2007, the Drama Gods members joined Perry Farrell's of Jane's Addiction. He started a new band called Satellite Party. They released one album, but during the tour, they all ended up quitting the band. I don't know why. July 2007, Nuno and Geary reformed Extreme. Now, Nuno has not only co-written and performed with multiple artists, he also produced multiple albums, as well as had numerous songs included in movies and TV. When Paul Geary left the band in 1994, he formed his own artist management group called PGM, and their first big client was Godsmack, which, if you don't know, they've sold more than 15 million records and have had 4 Grammy nominations. Pretty damn good band. In 2005, Geary joined a couple others to form AGP. They also manage Smashing Pumpkins, Creed, the Scorpions, and other big names. He reformed PGM in 2013, and in 2018, he expanded it to GAM, managing Johnny Depp, Joe Perry, and other bands and musicians. Finally, in 2020, they joined Shelter Music Group, and now they also manage Fleetwood Mac, ZZ Top, and others. Paul's great head for music management helped Extreme get started, and he really found his true calling. He's pretty successful at that stuff. After Extreme broke up, Pat Badger went on to perform with groups like Damon, In the Pink, Super Transatlantic, and he played with Geary and Tribes of Judah. And he was also in a band called Dark Desert Eagles, which is a tribute to the Eagles. Even though they were broken up, Extreme would still reform to do some concerts. In 2004, they played the Azores, in Boston. They played a few concerts in Japan. In July of 2006, they did a 3-date reunion tour in New England. 2007, they announced that they were going to go on tour with King's X, and they released a new album called Saudaces de Rock with Kevin Figueredo. I don't know if I'm saying that right, I'm sorry. From the Drama Gods. He was on drums. Paul Geary was still involved. He was their manager. In 2011, Nuno went on tour supporting Rihanna, and he was on tour with her for a couple of years. Who knew? I remember seeing them on the Super Bowl, but that kind of surprised me. The other members of the band, they were doing some side projects as well, and they had plans for concerts, but they never happened. They were too busy. Couldn't get the schedules to line up. In May 2015, Geary said they'd been working on and demoing new material for a follow-up album, and they were going to begin recording in the fall. In September 2015, Nuno said they had songs for the album and they were expected to release it in 2017. That never happened. The band did do some tour dates and some concerts between 2016 and 2023. On October 19th, 2019, they performed in Ukraine, India for over 30,000 fans. That's pretty cool. If you haven't heard, the wait is over. Extreme just released a new album on June 9th, 2023. It's called 6. This album was worth the wait. It kicks butt. The first song of the album, called Rise, it hits you in the face with an angry riff and it sets the tone for the record. Vocals are awesome. The guitars just scream. It's got driving and funky beats that you'd expect from Extreme, and it doesn't disappoint. This is one of the best rock offerings I've heard in a long time. You need to check it out. You can see it on YouTube and Spotify. Extreme's impact on the rock landscape is undeniable. Their willingness to blend diverse genres and experiment with their sound has inspired countless musicians that have followed. Nuno's virtuosic guitar playing, Kevin and Pat's solid drum lines and bass, and Gary's emotive vocals have left an indelible mark on rock music. They're just awesome. From their early days of raw energy to their evolution into the genre-defying artists that they are now, Extreme continues to be celebrated for their musical prowess and their distinctive sound. So whether you're a fan of their hard-hitting anthems or their heartfelt ballads, Extreme's legacy is sure to endure for generations to come. As always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If you did, let me know in the comments. And do me a favor, hit the like button. If you like stuff like this and you want to see more, consider subscribing. If there's somebody you want me to check out, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do that. So until next time, no matter what anybody says, don't forget, rock's not dead. Take care.